Sometimes we don't understand why we go through things in life. The Apostle Paul tells us in Philippians 4:11 that in all things we ought to learn to be content. So if we take a lesson from Joseph and stay true to God and live in the Spirit of God, rest assured God's plan will be revealed. Welcome to another edition of Sunday School with the Deek. I am Deacon Wallace Hill, the fourth proud member of the Mount Pisgah Missionary Baptist Church, where my father, the Honorable Wallace Hill III, is my pastor. I'm so happy to be coming into your living rooms, into your cell phones, your computers, your televisions, and your tablets. And thank you so much for tuning in each and every week and listening as we break down the Sunday School lesson in the International Lesson Series. For those of you that are new, do me a favor. Take your little hand, go down to the bottom of the page and hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell next to it. And each week when the Deek uploads another lesson, you will be notified. So, we are in our final week of our first unit for the fall quarter, which is called Struggles of Love. And this whole time we've been dealing with the story of Joseph. And we have surely seen the struggles of love in the life of Joseph. Joseph's brothers struggle to love him because they despise him. Because of their jealousy for their brother, they plot to kill him, which caused a snowball effect. Various bad events that happened to Joseph. He was sold to the Midianites, who in turn sold him to the Egyptians. He was accused of rape after trying to do the right thing. He was thrown in jail. He was let down by the inmate that he met in jail. But in all those events, God was there with Joseph. He was elevated to number 2 in all the land of Egypt. And last week we left off where Joseph's brothers had come back to Egypt to buy food because the entire land was in a famine, and Egypt was the only place where they could get food. So Joseph was in charge of distributing the food, and whoever came to Egypt had to buy food from him. And when his brothers arrived, they all bowed down to him and called him Lord and called themselves his servant. And see, this was the fulfillment of that dream that that got Joseph in trouble to begin with. And see, remember, the brothers tried to kill him because his dream was that one day they would all bow down to him. And then somehow things come full circle. Joseph recognized them when they came to buy food, but they didn't recognize Joseph. See, he was like 21 years older. And plus, he looked like an Egyptian. And he was number 2 in all of Egypt. Who would have thunk that would be their brother? There was no way you would ever think that the 17-year-old boy that they initially tried to kill, they'd changed their mind and sold him, would ever be number 2 in all of Egypt. Joseph gave them a hard time when they were trying to buy food. He called them spies. He took their brother Simeon and put him in jail and said they couldn't have him back unless they brought their younger brother Benjamin to him. And so the brothers was really distraught. And they talked among themselves, and they felt like God was punishing them because of what they had did to Joseph back 21 years ago. And see, Joseph was listening to them talk. And see, they didn't know Joseph could understand their Hebrew language because Joseph was speaking to them in Egyptian, and he talked to them through an interpreter. And so he sent them on their way with food that they could, with all the food that they could carry. And then he privately told one of his servants, hey, fill their sacks with all their money and all the money that they came with, and give them all the food and send them on their way. And that's where last week's lesson ended. So our lesson today starts with chapter 45, verse 1. We left off last week in chapter 42, verse 25. And there's a ton of stuff that happens between those chapters. So listen, our lesson opens up today with the verse. Let me read it. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him. And he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brethren. And see, so if you just open up the book and read that, there is no way you can start this lesson without reading what happened prior to this. So I hope you all read the 81 verses in between where we left off last week and where we start today. And if not, you're in luck, because the Deek is going to do my famous 60-second recap. I want you guys to time me this time, okay? Ready? Let's go. So as the brothers left Egypt to go back home, they stopped along the way for rest. One of the brothers realized that their money was put back into their sacks, and he immediately got terrified. And again, they felt like God was punishing them for their sin against Joseph. Then they got home, and they explained to their dad everything that had happened while they were in Egypt. They told him how harsh the governor of Egypt was to them, and how he kept Simeon as a prisoner and said that he couldn't be released until they brought their other brother Benjamin back. Their father, Jacob, had an absolute fit. He started blaming them for telling the governor that they had a brother. And then Jacob, their father, said, "You're robbing me of all my children. Joseph's gone, Simeon's gone, and now you want to take Benjamin." And Reuben, the oldest brother, steps up and tells his father, "Hey, Dad, I promise we'll get Benjamin back here. And if I don't get Benjamin back here, you could kill my 2 sons." Pause. Seriously? Why does Reuben feel like Jacob killing his grandsons would make him feel any better? I just don't get it. Anyway, Jacob said no to that plan, and so they went about their life. Then the food ran out. Jacob tells the kids, "I need you to go back to Egypt to get more food," and they remind their dad that they have to take Benjamin with them in order to get food. And first of all, I guess Jacob wasn't in too much of a hurry to get Simeon back, because he just went about life until the food ran out. Sometimes we don't want to do difficult stuff until we absolutely have to. But anyway, back to the recap. One of the brothers, Judah, spoke up and said that he would make sure Benjamin comes back with them, or he'll take the blame of this forever. So they told their dad, either we can take Benjamin with us and take a chance on losing him, or we can sit here and die. So Jacob agreed to let Benjamin go, but he told them, take some gifts and take the money that they sent back the first time, and take some more money. So they all loaded up the camels and everything, packed some balm, packed some honey, some gum, some aromatic resin, and some pistachios and some almonds, and double the money, and they went back to Egypt. This is good stuff, y'all. So they get to Egypt. Joseph sees his brother Benjamin with them, and he immediately tells his manager of his house to go slaughter an animal and prepare a feast for these brothers. So the manager did what Joseph told him and took the brothers into the palace, and the brothers got terrified thinking they were about to get killed because they think that they stole the money last time they were there. I hope you guys are following me. So the house manager tells them, "No, relax, don't worry about that. God put that money back in your sacks." So Joseph comes home, and they give him all the gifts, and they bow down to him again. Now pause. Remember, Joseph's dream was that all his brothers would bow down to him. Now last week they bowed down to him, but Benjamin was missing. Now the fulfillment of the dream has fully come, because all of the brothers are bowing. Okay, so back to the summary. I still got about 30 seconds left. So Joseph asks is their father alive and well? And they respond, yes. And then he asks the youngest brother, he asked, is this the youngest brother? And they say yes. And Joseph at that point hurries from the room and goes and starts crying. Now, he was so happy to see his full brother that he shared with his mom. So he ran to the other room and cried. And so then he cleaned up his face. He came back and brought the food out. And Joseph had his own table. And he set his brothers at another table. But get this, he set them all in order from oldest to youngest. And I know they had to spook them out. He gave everybody a portion of food, but he gave Benjamin 5 times as much as he gave all the other brothers. And then they all ate and drank. And so as the brothers were preparing to go back home, Joseph told his servants, hey, fill their sacks with as much food as you can give them, and put all their money back in their sacks again, and put my personal silver cup at the top of the youngest brother's sack. And so they did what Joseph said. And the brothers left, headed home at the break of dawn. And after a short while, Joseph told his servants, go after them. And when you catch them, ask them why they have repaid kindness with evil. Ask them, why have you stolen my master's silver cup? And so they went and they found them and they asked them, why have you stolen our master's cup? And they said, they responded and said, we would never do something like that. And you could go and you could search all of our sacks and you'll see that we didn't steal anything. And if anybody has the cup, let him die, and the rest of us will be your slaves forever. And so Joseph's people said, no, we don't need all of that. We just need the person that stole it. We need to take him back with us. And so they all opened up their sacks to show him. And lo and behold, Benjamin had the silver cup in his sack. And all the brothers saw this and they started losing their mind. Oh God, I can't believe this. And they fell to the ground crying. And so now they all loaded up their donkeys and headed back to Egypt. And when they got there, Joseph demanded to know what they had done. And he asked them, why did you steal the cup that I used to predict the future? And so Judah jumps in and says that they would never do anything like this and that God was punishing them. And then Judah explained to Joseph how much their dad loved Benjamin and that he would die if he lost Benjamin because he'd already lost one son. And so Judah begged Joseph to let Benjamin go. He pleaded with him to let Benjamin go back home. And he said, take me as your slave and let Benjamin go. And he said, I cannot return to my father's house if the boy Benjamin is not with me. And I couldn't bear to see the anguish in my father's eyes if Benjamin doesn't come back. And that is where the lesson starts today. See, I still didn't use all the 60 seconds that I needed. Woo! All right, so let's hurry into the verses as I've taken up a lot of time filling in the gaps. I'm sorry, but I just cannot teach without making sure we all level set on the background of the scripture. So we're going to start chapter 45, verse 1. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him. And he cried. And then he caused every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. So after hearing Judah plead not to let Benjamin, please let Benjamin go back to his father, he was begging him not to take Benjamin because of what it would do to his father. Joseph couldn't take it anymore. And Joseph began, he was being led by God in all that he did. And it may seem like Joseph was playing games with his treatment of his brothers, but it doesn't, this doesn't even fit Joseph's character. So let's not lose the fact that God was in all of this. God had directed all of this. So trust me, Joseph would never have chosen the path he took to get here. And I don't think Joseph would have chosen to treat his brothers the way he did either. But God had to get these brothers to a place where they could see their guilt. God had to get them back to the place where they felt remorse and the wrath of God all at the same time. So I don't want any of us feeling like we could put people through stuff who have, people who have hurt us. I don't want us to think that we can put people through stuff because you read these scriptures. Not once have you read in these verses that Joseph felt any anger toward these brothers. He is second in command. He has the freedom to do anything that he wants, and Pharaoh wouldn't have a problem with it. If he chose to make his brothers slaves, he was free to do that. If he chose to put his brothers in that prison that he was in, he was free to do that. If he decided that he wanted them executed, he was able to do that. However, this is what we need to understand. He is subject to God's authority, and it will be his relationship to God and his understanding of God's will that would dictate his actions towards his brothers. So now that he hears Judah and the sincerity in Judah's voice, he can't handle it no more. He can't handle the charade that he's been putting on. And so he breaks down in tears and starts crying in front of all of his retinue. You remember our word of the day last week was retinue. Well, he had all these men in the room and he told them all to leave. And he was still there. He was still their boss, and he didn't need them seeing him as a weak person. And I'm sure they already had issues with how much attention he was giving these Hebrew boys. So once they all left the room, it was just Joseph and his brother sitting in the room. And there was 2 other times where Joseph was left with them, and he got emotional, but he managed to hold himself, if you remember. But it was at this point that Joseph revealed who he was to his brothers. And I know that had to be an awesome feeling for Joseph, because he had fought off the urge to tell them who he was all this time, and now he gets a chance to reveal himself. Verse 2. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. It says, and he wept aloud. Joseph started to cry. And he wasn't just crying, but he was weeping. He had such a restraint on himself at all this time that he could no longer hold it back. It was like a flood of tears that just overcame him. And you've been in those positions before where you try your best and you stretch your eyes out as much as you can, and you can't help it. And it's just, the tear just came out, and he wept so loud. And can you imagine how these brothers are feeling standing here watching this man cry like this? The number 2 man of all of Egypt? They gotta be confused. They probably wonder, why do they even have him as an audience with such a powerful man? All they did was came there to buy some grain. They ain't just had one appearance in front of Joseph, but this is their 3rd one. And each of the other times they had been frightened by Joseph, because he called them spies and all of that stuff. Or they found the money in their sacks, or finding Joseph's silver cup. Every encounter with him has been bad. And Joseph forced them to leave Simeon as a hostage the first time. He threatened to enslave Benjamin on the second time. Joseph has thoroughly intimidated his brothers. So his loud weeping in their presence is completely unexplainable. And it's got to be throwing them for a loop. And they got to be wondering, what's going to happen to us now? They might also think, man, this dude kind of unbalanced, But check this out. It says the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. So let me clear this up for you. He wasn't crying so loud that Pharaoh heard it at his house. But his retinue that he sent out of the room earlier were close by, because they had to stay close because they were assigned to watch over him. So when they heard him crying, it was possibly that, they possibly heard the conversation too. But a snitch in the group went and told somebody, who went and told somebody, who went and told Pharaoh. And you got to remember, he's surely he's gonna have some haters in his group, even some haters working for him, because he's a Hebrew who has been elevated all the way to number 2 in the country. And he got a fine wife, and he got everything he could ask for. And so you got some haters that probably ran and told Pharaoh. Verse 3. And Joseph said unto his brother, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said to them, soon as Joseph composed himself, he began to speak. And the Bible makes it sound like he was weeping like crazy. Oh, and then all of a sudden he said, I'm Joseph. He says, I'm Joseph. Does my father yet live? I'm like, wait. Just wait a minute. You can't just drop a I'm Joseph on us and then go right into does my father yet live? Back up, man. Let's start all over. Because that's how I would have responded. But look at what these guys do. It says they couldn't say a word. They were troubled at his presence. If they thought God was trying to get at them before, I can only imagine how they feel right now. He calls himself Joseph. Now, up until now, they've known him as Zaphnath-Paneah, because that was his Egyptian name. But think about this. Up until now, he only spoke Egyptian. So to hear him speak Hebrew in a tone that sounds like their brother had to make them think they saw a ghost. And so hence, this was their response. They couldn't utter a word. Instead, they immediately became troubled at his presence. And that means kind of terrified. So the way it reads is that he said, I am Joseph, is my daddy alive? But I'm sure he proved himself with, maybe showed some scars or a birthmark, or even revealed some things to them that only they knew about. So I'm sure there's probably something that went on in between there. And I know their minds immediately went to their sin of selling him. And the guilt probably overcame all of their consciousness. And the fear of what probably was about to happen to them was on their mind as well. And I think our natural reaction as humans would be to think that he's going to take revenge on us, because that's just how we think. Verse 4. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold to Egypt. And Joseph said to his brothers, come near me, I pray you. Okay, so let's just pause here for a second to keep it real on both sides. I know I'm teaching Sunday school, and I know I got to show you how to be Christ-like. But first of all, if you were Joseph, you would probably go off. How y'all just going to be selling me to the Midianites after you threw me in the pit? Don't you know that I was sold to some Egyptians after that? Then I was wrongly accused of rape, then thrown in jail. Do you know what the last 22 years have been like in my life? But look at your boy now. I'm number 2 in all of Egypt. Boy, I can write a check and the bank bounce. Whatever I say, get done. Boo, boo, boo. Scared you, didn't I? Okay, see, that's why God won't let me act like I want to act. This is why we need Jesus, because Jesus can turn your heart. And Jesus can get you to turn the other cheek. And Jesus can get you to forgive 7 times 7. And the Spirit of God can tell the people who tried to kill you. The Spirit of God can get you to tell the people who tried to kill you, come near, I pray. And so let's keep it real on the other side. You think any of us would be too quick to come near? Man, not your boy. I'll be up out of there so fast. I'll be like the road runner. Anyway, he says, I am Joseph, who you sold into Egypt. And this wasn't, he didn't say this to make them feel bad, but to assure them that it was him. But I'm sure it hit him like a ton of bricks, because, he's being nice to them. And most of us are uncomfortable when people are nice to us after we did them wrong. We prefer them to be mean to us, because then we can stay mad. And when people who we treated wrong treat us nice, we get suspicious. Let's go to verse 5. Now, therefore, be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. Now, I don't know about you, but this verse moves me. He tries very hard to assuage them for their grief. Ding, ding, ding! Word of the day is assuage. Alex, the word girl, can you help me out?
Good morning, Deek. The word of the day is assuage. Assuage means to make an uneasy feeling less intense.
He says, don't be grieved. Now, how selfless can you be? He's more concerned about their feelings than his own. Think about that. He's telling them, don't be grieved. You know, he reminds me so much of Jesus. I can hear him now saying, let not your heart be troubled. You know, Joseph is giving us a good lesson on forgiveness. He says, don't be sorry. This tells me that they did show some remorse. It's not written in the Bible, but for him to say this, they probably were showing some remorse. So much so that he had to stop them from showing grief. And he says, don't even be mad at yourselves. Which tells me that some of them probably started getting angry at each other, fighting among themselves. You know, Reuben was probably right up there talking about, I told y'all not to do this. But Joseph says, God put me in this place so that your lives would be saved. Joseph could see the bigger picture, y'all. Joseph understands that even though they wanted him to die, God wanted them to live. Wait, listen. His brothers wanted him to die, but God wanted them to live. So God had you treat me bad so that he could bless me. And then I could in turn bless you. And then bless all the people of the land in the end. And sometimes we just got to look at the bigger picture, y'all. This doesn't mean that the brothers are guiltless. You know, Joseph is going to acknowledge that later when he says, as for you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. He's going to say that in chapter 50, verse 20. The fact that God can give an evil deed a positive outcome, that don't remove the guilt from the evildoer. It doesn't. The New Testament does not absolve Judas for betraying Jesus. You know, even though something good came out of what Judas did, neither does it absolve Pilate or Herod or the religious authorities that were all involved in the decision to kill Jesus. You know, the Good Friday evildoers do not get to become saints because of what happened on Resurrection Sunday. So, God often does work in contraries. Because think about it, many of the people that put Jesus to death were saved by his death. Woo! Woo! Verse 6. So, for these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. So he tells them that this is only year 2 of the famine, and we still got 5 more years to go. So God's bigger plan is in play here. Verse 7. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So, all of Joseph's sorrows that he went through were for a purpose. And God used them to preserve his family in all the land. So I'm about to get deep on y'all. It is also going to be, it's also going to provide the conditions for Israel to become a nation. See, this is all in the plan. And if you know the story of the nation of Israel, they will come out of the land of Egypt. Oh my God, this is good stuff. So tell me God don't know what he's doing. Joseph was a victim of men, but God turned it into his glory. So, none of this was for a loss, y'all. He's got to get them here to Egypt so he can use Moses to get them out of Egypt by crossing the Red Sea 400 years from now. So don't get down when you go through things. God always has a plan. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says that, God sees everything from the end back to the beginning. He knows the outcome of everything that's going to happen. And that's why he can have a plan for you. And just trust him that he's going to guide you to where that end is. So no matter what you're going through, if it seems bad right now, hold on. Think of yourself as a diamond. Diamonds face all kinds of intense pressure and heat before they even come out pure and valuable on the other side. So don't get discouraged. And think about the story of Joseph whenever you're going through something. Verse 8. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Look at how grown up Joseph is. I just love the way, he helps put things into perspective. This is the third time that he has given God all the glory for the events that have taken place in his life. He did it in verse 5, he did it in verse 7, and now he's doing it here in verse 8. He has long forgotten about the sting of being thrown into the pit and being sold. His being falsely accused and spending time in the clink behind is behind it. He's not thinking about it in his head anymore. All he can see is God and everything that has happened to him. And I bet if you look back at your life and you can see some twists and turns in your road that has gotten you to the point where you are today, and you can look at it and say that you're a better person or that you have made somebody else better. And see, sometimes our struggles are not for us, but our struggles are for others. And that's what happened with Joseph. Joseph struggled, but it was for others. He saved not only his family, but the whole world. Jesus struggled for us. So it's not always about us. You might be struggling for somebody else. So Joseph says, it's not you that sent me here. It was God. Yes, God used you to sell me to the Midianites, and it was God that has made me an advisor to Pharaoh and manager of all he has. And I am the governor of Egypt. God directed all those events to bring Joseph to this place. Verse 9. Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all of Egypt. Come down unto me, and tarry not. He says, haste ye, and go up to my father. He says, hurry up, go back to Canaan and get dad. And can you imagine the joy that is going to come over Jacob's face when he hears that his son is actually alive? Man, can you imagine the happiness that Joseph is going to feel when he's reunited back with his dad? And one of the relationships we rarely talk about is the loving relationship between father and son. And it's one of those relationships that when it's done right, it can be very powerful. Men always want to act all macho all the time, but a father and son can move, if you can move beyond the macho and express love to one another and respect for one another, it can be a powerful relationship. We always hear about mothers and sons, fathers and daughters, even mothers and daughters, but you rarely tout fathers and sons. And today, I lift up the father and son relationship. I love you, Dad. I love you, son. And I thank God for both of you. Back to the lesson. Joseph says, hurry and go get Dad. Tell him his son Joseph says, God has made me the Lord of Egypt. And tell him to come to Egypt at once. And it's like any son that has done well. He wants his father to know how, about his success. And he wants to share his success with his dad. And so Joseph gives God credit again the fourth time. Look, he said, he tell Dad to come and see what God has done for me. Man, he calls himself Joseph though, y'all. He ain't give himself no titles, no fancy names, just Joseph. He says, God has made me the Lord over Egypt, not Pharaoh. He didn't give Pharaoh the credit. He gave God the credit. And he tells his brothers to go get their dad. And we got to remember Joseph still got a job to do. You know, he's a very busy man, very important man, got business to tend to, so he tells his brothers to go. Verse 10. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And so he says, thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen. And the land of Goshen is located near the Nile Delta. And so the delta is located between somewhere between where the Nile empties, somewhere around the Mediterranean Sea. And this location kind of goes between Cairo and the Mediterranean. So, but if you know anything about deltas, sorry, Seville, I'm not talking about the sorority. But if you, but deltas, you know, they deposit silt in all kinds of places, and they have the availability of water irrigation. And deltas are among the most fertile agricultural grounds in the world. And also the river can be used for transportation, which they can use for commerce, you know, and as a result, river deltas tend to be really, really prosperous. The only problem with living near a delta is flooding sometimes. But you see, I say all that to say Joseph is doing his family real well by putting them here. I didn't just slip over where he's Goshen. I had to tell you what Goshen meant and what it was all about, because God is blessing these people. And so, you know, we don't know if Pharaoh had given his land to Joseph to do what he wanted to do with it, or if he was so powerful that he could just pick wherever he wanted them to go. But it's believed that Pharaoh had granted Joseph this land. And you can probably see that in Pharaoh's comments in chapter 47, verse 6. But just like Jesus went to prepare a place for us to be with him, Joseph prepares a place for his brothers who he has forgiven their sins. Whew. Oh my God, so many parallels. Verse 11, and there I will nourish thee. It's so many parallels, y'all, and this is the first book of the Bible. Jesus don't get here till thousands of years later. Anyway, so verse 11, and there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all thou hast come to poverty. He tells them in the previous verse not only to bring their dad, but bring their families, their kids, their grandkids, their servants, and all their animals, because he's going to make sure that they all survive over the next 5 years, and not just survive, but give them a good life. He says, otherwise y'all going to die. Verse 12, and behold, your eyes see in the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaketh unto you. So Joseph says, look at me. You see me with your own eyes. You are eyewitnesses to me being alive. And even Benjamin sees me. Because, see, he knows that they probably still had a terrible record with their dad. So the dad probably ain't going to believe him. So he says, if they won't believe you, he'll believe Benjamin for sure. So this draws a parallel, again, to when Jesus returned to the disciples after his resurrection. And they all was looking at him in amazement. And then they were putting their hands in the place that the nails went through. You know, it was so they could be eyewitnesses to the fact that he lives. Woo! Oh my God, I told you this is good. Anyway, 13. And ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and all that ye have seen, and ye shall haste and bring down my father hither. He tells them to go and tell dad of everything you have seen here. You know, all my wealth and all my riches, all my power, all my authority, the palace that I live in, all my servants, the second chariot to the king, how people move at my command, and the reverence that they give me, and how I'm all over the distribution of the food for the entire world. Hurry up and go tell them to get here. Verse 14. And he fell upon his brother's Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin went upon his neck, or wept upon his neck. Then he turned to his brother Benjamin, the brother that he had shared a father and a mother with. He fell on his neck and he cried with joy. He is so happy to see his little brother. And the Greek word for neck here is plural, so it signifies that he fell on one side of his neck and then he fell on the other side of his neck, kissing him and showing him a whole bunch of deep affection. And then it says Benjamin reciprocated. He did the same thing. Last verse, y'all, 15. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them. And after that, his brethren talked with him. And to me, this is the most touching part of the lesson. I'm actually getting chills when I sit here and read it, because y'all didn't know that the Deek had a sensitive side to him. He turns to his brothers, the brothers that meant him harm 22 years ago, the brothers who hated him so much that they wanted him dead, the brothers who hated him so much that they couldn't speak a word to him, the brothers that hated him so much that they did everything in their power to kill him, and when that didn't work, they sold him, but they was trying to kill his dream. So he turns to them one by one, and he kisses them and he hugs them with real, true affection. And this is the confirmation of the reconciliation. Man, that wasn't bad. The Deek, yeah, confirmation of reconciliation. And after that, guess what they did? They all sat down to talk. And they had 22 years of stuff to catch up on, y'all. I mean, they had to talk about weddings and fatherhood and husbandhood and everything in between. So this was a scene that had to be a wonderful sight. I can only imagine what it was like after everybody knew that everybody was good and they just started talking about everything that's happened over the 22 years. And so I want you to take notice of a couple things. Joseph never said, "I told you so." He never brought up the fact that the dream had come true. He never basked in the glory of them bowing down to him. He knew it happened. And guess what? They knew it happened too. And also, he is here hugging and kissing his brothers, and not one of them has asked him for forgiveness. Sometimes we hold on to stuff, given our own protocol for how reconciliation has to happen. But our forgiveness to people should happen whether they ask for it or not. Remember, this is not about you and them. This is about you and God. God wants us to respond to him. He does not want you to respond to them. Work on your spirit. Do you think that God doesn't know that this person treated you bad? God says, "I'll take care of them. Vengeance is mine." You just keep working, trying to have my spirit and loving people in spite of them. And if you get caught up in you, if you get caught up in your feelings, then you still haven't fully surrendered yourself to God. And so trust me, it's hard. I know it is. But if you want to get there, you can get there. That's the thing. You got to want to be able to be like this. And so the takeaways from today's lesson: all things work together for good for those who love God. God sees everything from the end to the beginning. So trust him that he will guide you to the place where he wants you. Even if you have to get sold out, lied on, be in a situation where you feel helpless or imprisoned, it may be the road you have to take to get to your palace. Or better yet, to get you to the place where you can save others. Don't hold grudges. Give God all the glory and love on your family. So those are my takeaways from this. Man, this was good stuff today. This was our last week with Joseph. If you want to see how the story ends, go and read the final 5 chapters of this wonderful book. Next week, we'll start the second unit of our fall quarter. The unit is called Inclusive Love. So over the next 4 weeks, we'll be in 1 Samuel, Luke, and 1 Corinthians. So next week we're in 1 Samuel. We'll be in chapter 19, verses 1 through 7. And the lesson is called Love and Devotion to Others. Whew. Okay. Here is another lesson. Oh, comment. Please say something to me. Share. Please share it with your friends. And just put the word out there that we're trying to make Sunday school fun again. And as we say every week, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another. Amen. Sunday school with the Deek.